don't you tell us, how did we end up where we're at? How did the library project fall apart?
I wish I knew.
Exactly.
Along a twisted road we've traveled. You know, for again, assuming that many of your viewers aren't as familiar with what we did with the Central Library, we actually had the council create a committee, which is what we often do in Madison, create a committee to deal with the Central Library question. So coincidentally enough, Marsha and I were two of the three alders serving on the Central Library Committee, the third being Larry Palm, who also is the alder on the library board. Anyway, we put out a request for proposals asking any interested developers to respond with proposals for a new central library that would likely include selling the existing central library on West Mifflin Street. We had two respondents, T-Wall Properties and Fieri Ergen's development team. The committee scored and what have you, and we chose the Fiore proposal, which was for a new freestanding central library on West Washington Avenue at South Henry Street, and the city council went along with that report. The mayor then included enough money for that project to go forward in the 2010 proposed capital budget. To my pleasant surprise, because I supported a new library on West Washington Avenue, felt most downtown stakeholders, most of my constituents did, the council, without a lot of dissenting or really having a lot of discussion, practically unanimously, I believe, it wasn't nearly unanimously, approved the central library proposal in the budget. Now, if you look at the actual budget wording, it doesn't say a new library on West Washington Avenue, but that's what we all thought we were voting on. So then the mayor and his staff entered into these private negotiations with the successful respondents, Fiore Ergen's team, and from there, much of it was veiled in secrecy, and I can't really fill you in on what happened, except that between November, when the council nearly unanimously approved the funding for the new library, and where we are now in March, things fell apart. My understanding is that through much of that time, there was really no discussion whatsoever between the two sides. When they finally did negotiate, things didn't go very well, and the proposal changed in different ways. And I don't know if we have time to get into a lot of the details, but suffice to say, the mayor made a unilateral decision to end and cease all negotiations with Fiore Ergens and announced that he wanted instead to have a rehab of the existing West Mifflin Street Central Library facility. And so the City Council will apparently be discussing that by way of a resolution that will be introduced at the next council meeting, and I presume sent to some committees and discussed, which would put the council on record supporting a rehab project and allowing city staff to start a process to select a consultant to help us manage that project.
And Marsha, I know you kind of knew there was something happening and that things were falling apart, and you made some very good attempts to try to make something happen. You want to discuss
what first happened was there's an online newspaper of the building trades called the Daily Reporter, and one of their good reporters had a story about the negotiations falling apart, and I was like, what's going on? Why am I reading this in the newspaper was my first thought. And so I contacted the council leadership to say, can we put this on the agenda of the CCOC, the the organization committee of the council, which I serve, and I basically got no response. The first time the meeting was canceled because of the president was gone, and then the next one, I thought it was going to be on the agenda in February, but was it March? But that didn't happen. And at that meeting, we asked what was going on, and we were told that there was a delicate part of negotiations, and that we would be having a meeting of the Board of Estimates and CCOC that would probably go into closed session. And I announced at that time that I would be seeking information on my own, of which I'd already started actually. But so I contacted Bill Konkel of the Fiore companies, and we talked on several occasions, and I learned to my dismay that the whole negotiations were falling apart. And it's kind of ironic because at some point on the surplus committee, when we learned about the rehab proposal, because as the committee went through its deliberations, we thought, well, what does it cost to fix the library if we just decided not to choose any of these proposals. So they hired a consultant that does these kind of things, and they had, the basic how to fix it up, $8 million, add, do some things. I don't remember the different price tags, but there were 3 options, and the third one was pretty exciting, and it would add a new story and reorient the doorway. And I remember thinking, well, using old buildings is really green, and I liked it, but I guess I got really lobbied by the mayor and Trip Witter of the library board to look at the value of a whole block development and what it would mean if we did that approach. And I became persuaded that with the prices, the construction bids would have been cheaper, that a public works process was mentioned, but it was purported to be a lot more expensive. Sure. So with all those factors, I kind of went along with that. So I did find out from Bill some of the things that had gone on before it got kind of the mayor sent it out. He finally did, because there was an open records request by a local journalist besides Paul Schneider of the Daily. It was Dean Mosman, and so that's when the mayor decided to inform the council of what was going on.
It's interesting, the reporters and the people who are doing
Luckily,
their
we
blogs
have
and stuff.
reporters
Exactly.
in the media. So WYOU, give them money.
Exactly. So, and you're kind of saying that maybe the rehab isn't such a bad option.
Yeah, but
I mean,
I'm not.
there's some
They
positive things
convinced
about
me,
it.
and I'm not ready to change. I want to know why. What happened? Are we done yet? And I'm not. I'm not there yet. So.
So, I started looking around. I got lobbied by an alder for the show, and I started looking around a little bit today, and I was really surprised to find in the budget, and actually the title does say New Central Library, which surprised me, and then it does say that $4 million is supposed to come from the sale of the land. In this new scheme, the land won't get sold, correct?
No.
Correct.
And so what does that mean? Where does the council go from here? I mean, even if you pass this resolution, there must have to be other actions after that. I mean,
we'd have to change that language, and would we void the allocation and have to re-vote on it, reauthorize it? You're the expert after how many years?
Well, thank you. In talking to both Mayor Dave and city staff, the interpretation that they all have, perhaps no surprise, is that the way the budget is worded, it's pretty open-ended, and it was a cut and paste job between a budget amendment I offered on the floor in the fall relating to a green roof and a rooftop community garden, and then an amendment that Alder Michael Schumacher offered relating to new market tax credits and some comfort language. And when the comptroller's office codified, if you will, the budget language, they smushed it kind of all together. Anyway, the bottom line is the mayor and the city attorney's office, the comptroller are all saying in a united front that we don't need a budget amendment per se. This is not a supermajority 15-vote budget amendment as required by state statute, that the resolution that Alder Clear is introducing that I referenced earlier would just need a simple 11 vote. So that's the spin that as of today.
That is interesting. I would
surprise you?
Yeah. What about the portion in the budget where it says that $6 million will come from the new market tax credits and that the project can't start until that happens? Has there been an application, or how does that process work?
There's been no application.
Yeah, I figured that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are these loaded questions?
No, I feel, there's lots of these things where,
Right.
this is pretty typical,
No,
though, for
you're
the council
exactly
to
right.
not know the answers to some of these
Right.
questions.
We were
and-
certainly out of the loop. While concurring with what Marsha said, I give Marsha credit for trying to get the answers, and many of us felt, I think, slighted, to put it mildly. But you're exactly right in terms of the budget language. I mean, there's no sale of the land, for sure, and that's in there as a funding source.
Sure.
And then new market tax credits, who knows, so.
What about, does the library move in this process? Was that
Huge
discussed?
question.
Yeah.
I know that the HGA, the consultants for the rehab, suggested you could kind of squish stuff together, but we don't really know how it's going to really look until they plan it out more.
Right.
So a lot of unanswered questions at the moment.
Right. There was a timeline that the mayor's office put out pretty promptly before any of the council discussed this, at least formally, that included one timeline if the Central Library relocated on a temporary basis and cleared the site, and then a longer timeline if they stayed and tried functioning with the jackhammering and so forth, and the dust and all that, and that would lengthen the construction time if that was the case.